Hey guys, I hope you had a great spring break. Um, I know I did. I definitely cooked a ton and also sewed a bunch of face masks for people. Excuse my appearance, but I'm sure as many of you are probably also having some difficulties about what to do with your hair when you need a haircut badly. So stay tuned for future hair care updates. Anyway. I just wanted to say hello and also to talk a little bit about what we're going to do in class this week. I hope to have some live Google Meet available for you, but my biggest concern is that my computer or my Chromebook really doesn't really sustain Google Meets and or Google or Zooms very well. So there's a lot of delays with the video and the audio. So right now we're just going to try these little messages. So just to review a little bit about what we did before break, we were talking about the three-part strategy that women suffragists had to gain the right to vote from, when they started trying to work for the vote in 1848 in Seneca Falls, all the way up until the passage of the amendment in 1920. And they had a three-part strategy. The first strategy was to challenge laws that didn't allow women to vote in court. So what women would do, like, for example, Susan B. Anthony, they would vote, and then subsequently they would be arrested for voting. And then they would take their case to court and they would use the 14th Amendment that said all persons born in the United States are citizens. And they would say, well, aren't women citizens? And if women are citizens and citizens have the right to vote, then shouldn't women also have the right to vote? And that was their least successful strategy. The Supreme Court ruled that, yes, women are citizens, but no, they aren't granted the right to vote like male citizens would be. Their second strategy was to campaign state by state using the 10th Amendment or federalism, where it's saying that states can make their own individual election laws, and therefore they could determine who voters would be. And this strategy was semi-successful in that a number of states did grant women the right to vote, particularly in the West. Wyoming being the first state, and then Utah, Colorado, and Idaho subsequently in the next couple of years, granting women's suffrage. And then, some states slowly granting women the right to vote, but that took a long time, and it needed a lot of women in all of the individual states lobbying state legislatures to change those laws. So while it was successful, it was arduous. It took a long time and it was difficult. And then the last strategy was to make a constitutional amendment. And this strategy goes along with the state by state campaign. So we talked, or you read about, actually, we didn't actually talk about it. You read about how to make a constitutional amendment, and that Congress needs to pass it like a bill, but unlike a bill, it needs a 2/3 majority in both houses to pass. This, is because if you're going to change the Constitution, you need to have a large majority, more than 50% of the people, or more than 51% of the people wanting to change the Constitution. So a 2/3 majority, or 66% of both the House of Representatives and the Senate. And once that passes, then it's sent to the states for ratification. So then each state has to determine whether or not they would like to approve this amendment. And it needs to have 75% or 3/4 of the states to pass a constitutional amendment. And in 1920, that was 36 states, since there were only 48 states in 1920. Now, if you need senators and reps, and you need individual states, if you're also conducting a state-by-state campaign, then the states where women already have the right to vote have senators and representatives who have female constituents who are voting for them. And so those senators and representatives in Congress would be more likely to support an amendment if their state already has woman voting. Additionally, the more states you have where women have the right to vote, the more likely that those states would ratify the amendment. So the state-by-state campaign, while it was slow, was necessary for getting the amendment rolling. And it took a long time for the amendment process to be successful. I mean, there were multiple proposals for a constitutional amendment for woman suffrage over the years, and it wasn't until 1917 and 1918 when the proposal started to get traction in the Congress. So we talked about those strategies. And then we also started looking at what was happening in the country at the same time as woman suffrage. And we looked at, or we watched a movie on the progressive movement. Now, I didn't assign you the book pages, but for today's activity, you can reference the book pages in addition to going back and looking at the movie if you want. So the movie talked about the progressive era, and the progressive era was a movement for change in the early part of the 20th century. So they wanted to change a lot of societal issues like corruption in business, corruption in the government, poverty, housing issues in big cities where housing was scarce and the buildings were not conducive to good living. Pollution was a problem. There were all kinds of work issues, workplace safety issues, child labor. All of these things were problems that progressives wanted to kind of fix to improve society. And they had to do a lot with, industrialization, that the country was moving more into industry and less farming, and cities were becoming places where more and more people were living because that's where most of the jobs were. And as more people moved into the city, more issues and more problems arose. So there were lots of reformers trying to change and make laws in all kinds of different areas on these issues. Now, women's suffrage is occurring at the same time, at least the amendment process, between 1912 and 1920 when the amendment is ratified. So it's the height of the progressive era. And women suffragists who were also trying to convince women that they needed the right to vote, and to convince men that women needed the right to vote, and to convince congressmen, and to convince, all aspects of society, were using these progressive issues or problems, so to say, to make arguments for why women should have the right to vote. So today what you're going to do is you're going to pick three. This is a little bit of a review of last week. You're going to pick three issues, and you can use the book and the video and explain to me in a written form or in an art form why these issues, what the issue was, why it was a problem, and what the progressives wanted to do about it. And then tomorrow and the subsequent day, you're going to look back at those issues and think about how would women use some of those arguments to convince women that they would be better off if they had the right to vote, because they would be able to fix some of these problems, and how these problems would be affecting women in their role in the home. All right, so that was kind of a long video, longer than I thought I was going to talk for. I'm going to try and do a couple of these a week as check-ins, and then I'm going to put some links on Google Classroom for meets if people actually want to meet and talk about school stuff, questions you have about the content and stuff like that. Like I said, my computer is not amazing with the live video feed. So I I hope that this makes sense. If you have questions, obviously I will be on office hours and on Google Classroom and Google and email. I hope everyone is doing well, and hopefully we will be able to see each other soon somehow. All right. Have a good day, everyone.